Happy Thursday. It's Debbie DeGroat here. I am excited to do this topic. It's funny. I was thinking about it this morning and I thought, I actually love price reductions, but then it made me think about how I used to hate them. And I thought I should ask you guys, how many of you absolutely don't love getting price reductions, talking to the sellers, handling all their frustrations, right? It is actually a really hard part of the job. So I'm going to give you some really good tips and strategies today. I'm going to cover lots of content. Okay, awesome, Clay. I'm glad you could say you could hear me. Thank you for that. And I would love to see you guys type in for me, if you will, right now. Let's take a minute while everyone's getting on board. Type into the chat box, maybe what is the toughest piece for you of getting price reductions or managing your sellers and having those conversations. And here's why. Because we're going to cover a lot of content. We are absolutely recording this. We will absolutely send you a copy of it. It just takes, I think, about a day to turn that around, and you'll have that in your inbox. But what I want to do for you is I want to stay on a little bit longer at the end. And if I haven't covered your challenge that you're typing in the chat box, then I'm going to make sure to spend some time. You can do a Stump the Coach. We'll just cover those challenges at the end. We are a real estate family. My husband, Don, is over 30 years in the business. Both of my daughters are licensed. So we live every day what you all live in every day. And I was just talking to my husband last night about one of his tough sellers, very unrealistic. Sometimes it's easy to be impatient with them. But what I've learned after 3,000 transactions is if you're going to keep that listing, you need to keep asking. So for the last 22 plus years, over 100,000 private coaching sessions, here's what I discovered. One of the toughest things, even for the most seasoned agents, it's often these price reduction conversations. So let's make a deal. I'm going to cover as much as I can in our short time together. And when you guys stay on till the end, you can ask any question, and I'm more than happy to share anything I can. And then I'll show you, if you still feel you need some additional help, how you can get that help from me. So let's start with winning the listing, right? What do you guys think? And I love to see you type in the chat box. And remember, I'm going to come back to your questions later, but type in the chat box for me right now. What do you guys think is the number one reason that a seller does not choose you? So take a minute, type that in. That way I'll also know we're all still connected. So the number one reason in your experience that the seller doesn't choose you, right? Price. Doesn't hear what they want to hear, right? Usually price. Kathy Toscas, my goodness, girl, that's a blast from the past. Fabulous to have you here on the webinar. Great to see you. You're right, guys. It's price. So if it's the price you give them, then let's ask ourselves this question. What percentage of sellers do you think want to overprice their property? What would your thought be? Percentage that would want to, most of them. Lori, hey, another great one that I haven't spoken with for a while. Hope you're doing well. All my friends are here today. So yes, most of them. So have you guys ever lost a listing because you were too honest? And that's a tough one because on the one hand, obviously we all want to be honest and truthful in how we do our business. We also don't want to end up with a bunch of overpriced listings. But I remember back, it was probably the early 90s, maybe 94, 95. Let me think how old my girls were, probably about 94 here in California. So I don't know how it was in your market at that time. It was really tough to get homes sold. There was lots of inventory. And I made a decision that I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell it like it is. I am not going to take anything overpriced. I'm going to tell them exactly where it needs to be. And that's how I'm going to roll. And I did it. And guess what? My listing taken ratio went from over 90%, plummeted to 48% listings taken. But then I told myself, well, that's okay, because they priced it too high and I didn't want that. But then it later sold because, see, they listed it, they came into reality. Potentially that agent did a good job educating and informing them, and they ultimately adjusted the price and sold it. So I had to have a little heart to heart with myself, and I had to ask myself if I am open to taking a listing that I feel is a little overpriced. But if so, then what is my strategy? How do I handle the truth, but also handle these unrealistic sellers? So guys, I don't have slides for all of this. I'm just going to go a little bit rogue with you here because this is important. I think we need to realize that our sellers today, unlike sellers 10 years ago or 20 years ago, they're very well informed. And they have probably already made up their mind before you get there where they're going to price that property. And you're going to have a little bit of influence, potentially not a lot. Also, always go online. I'm sure you do. Go online to Zillow, whatever other portal you think is important, and see what they are seeing. Now, we all know, in fact, even Zillow says, I Googled this once, they even say that their estimates can be off by as much as 10% too high or low. So I'm not saying to you that that's accurate. It's just that's what they're seeing. So we need to see what they're seeing. I always like to ask on the phone, I'm curious, did you have a price in mind? Was there a number you were looking to achieve? Now, I don't need to discuss that with them on the phone. I don't need to rebut that on the phone. I just need to know that. So as I prepare for that appointment, I know, are they realistic? Are they unrealistic? How hard is my job going to be? So as I'm looking at the data, what I'm looking to do is determine before I go in, how high am I willing to go? So I may say, I'm going to measure their time over motivation. They're super motivated, but they have a little bit of time. So they're going to want to test the market. I may be okay with that, but where's my limit, right? Where's my limit where I say, this is just not a good investment of my time and energy? So I realized that I needed to have standards to hold myself accountable for when I would take an overpriced listing. Because haven't we all done this? It's been a while since you had a great listing. You get so excited. You're rushing over there. You can't wait to get that listing. And you get back in the car and you go, what did I just do to myself? Right? This thing is so overpriced. What did I just do? So I wanted to have my standards starting by how high in advance am I willing to go? And then I need to also make them feel that I will fight for them. So here are my standards. I'll give them to you really quick. I determined in advance how high I was willing to go. I looked at the seller's motivation. Was it strong enough? Or were they just messing around, testing the market? I also looked at the seller themselves. Were they someone that I could work with that would be reasonable, or were they going to just drive me crazy? And then the property itself. Didn't have to always be beautiful, but was something really wrong with it that would make it so hard to sell that if I don't get that listing, I don't want it. Or if I don't get it at the right price, I don't want it. So you figure all that out. But I'll give you one more thought. I also discovered I had to change my attitude and approach. I realized I was going in too harsh, too much like the angel of death, like, this is what it's worth. It's not worth a penny more. And that repelled them. So what I realized is I need to make them feel I'm their champion. I need to make them feel I will fight for them. And they hate it when you say things like, we can try it, right? You know what they also hate? Get rid of the word comp. Don't use it anymore. Because guess what? When have you ever said to a seller, Rodrigo, think about this. When have you ever said to a seller, your home comps to the neighbor? And they said, oh, Rodrigo, you're right. We comp exactly to that neighbor. Don't they always argue? Don't they always say, no, 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 mine is bigger, better, nicer view? Guess what? We just broke rapport a little bit. So instead, why not just say, let's review the data that the buyers will be reviewing when they make a decision to view your home or to negotiate to purchase it. Just call it the data. I also like to say, let's look at what your neighbors have been selling for, right? So I know what they told me on the phone they wanted. Now we review the data. And now I'm going to offer them pricing strategies. I'm going to say, well, you know, Lester, I have 3 strategies that are options for you that we should discuss today. Strategy number 1, I call it less is more. We price a little bit below the data, knowing that that may spark multiple bids. Client here in Santa Barbara just did this last week. They had 25 offers, right? So that's a great strategy if you're comfortable. Strategy number 2, we price it right to the data. It will mean a likely more quick sale, and we'll be able to justify the appraisal quite easily because we have the data. Or strategy number 3, I call it the retail pricing strategy. We price as high as we feel the ceiling might be, testing that ceiling, knowing that if the market does not respond favorably, we may have to get back together, create a new strategy, and make an adjustment. So based on your time frame and situation, which strategy do you prefer? See, guys, you're tenderizing them to the pricing conversation by engaging them, right? You're not talking at them. You're not pitching to them. And so let's say that they tell you, well, what they probably will, right? We want the retail pricing strategy. Well, if we look at the retail pricing strategy, that probably puts us in a range of X to X. Where inside of that range would you like to begin? See, again, options engaging. Now, we'll get to this at the end, but once I take that listing, I'm going to spend a moment and I'm going to set expectations. And what I'm going to tell them is I will always respect you enough to tell you the truth. I will give you the unfiltered feedback with your permission of how the market is responding. I will share market trends and data, and I will give you my professional recommendations, and then it will be up to you to choose to do them or not. Right? And I like to ask this question too. You know, I'm curious, Tina, if the property did not sell at that price, what would you choose to do? Do you have other options you're considering? Now, see, I may already pretty much know that Tina doesn't have other options, but by asking her and having her, in a sense, confront her own reality that no, I don't have other options. I do need to get this property sold. Then I'm helping her self realize that we're going to need to work hard together as partners to make this happen. Now, we all know that they probably know that you can look and see days on market on a property. But you know what? When they're wearing their seller hat, they tend to forget about that. So I always want to remind them when I'm going to have a price adjustment conversation or set those expectations at the end, I want to remind them that the world can see days on market and how that can potentially work against them. And I'll even say, I realize you're not in a hurry. However, the ideal time frame to sell your home to get it under contract is within 30 days. Because within 30 days, it's still fresh, right? But when it starts going 2 or 3 months, buyers start to have doubts. They make lower offers. They may not even come to see it because they think something's wrong with it. So in the 2-week marker, if we do not have offers on the table or have it sold, we're going to want to start having those strategy conversations. And ideally, if an adjustment needs to be made, no later than 21 days in, which still could give us enough time to potentially go under contract in that 30-day window. Now, some of you here, because we do coach a lot of big luxury clients, and it would depend on how hot the market is in that, segment, but it potentially would be a longer time frame on a big luxury listing, right? So what do you do though if they won't list at the price you feel is the proper price? And this would really also very much apply in luxury, but they want really expensive marketing. One of our great luxury clients here in Newport Beach, he said, I tell them, if you list at the price I recommend and you do the things I recommend to get it sold, I'm okay with spending a bit more than my normal budget on the marketing. However, if you're going to prefer to choose the price and to be very aggressive in that pricing, then I'm going to need to ask that you front the money for those extra marketing expenses. Could be expensive staging, right? That you front the money for those. And if you choose, you could even say, and I'll pay back a percentage upon the closing, right? If it closes, because I've seen too many agents, especially in the luxury segment, that front $5, $10, $15, $20,000 for expensive staging. And then the seller just suddenly decides they don't like the prices. It takes the home off the market and won't pay that back, right? So be careful, okay? It's okay to set your budget. And then if they want extra things outside of it, ask them to front those items. Now, so once they've listed with you, and then we're going to get into the price reduction part here, because I want to set the stage for you. Once they list with you, don't rush out the door. Spend another maybe 20 minutes. And that's where you can really, whatever you're going over with disclosures, you're answering questions, you're setting your communication plan, and you're setting expectations. See, what happened with my husband with this one that he has, it's in an area that's not that sexy. And it's a probate, and it's ugly, and it's plain, and it's difficult to get into. And they were calling, even though it's barely on the market, having a fit because they didn't have an offer already. Because they were referencing, I saw somebody with COVID market, typed in there. Exactly. They were referencing, I know some of the neighbors sold their houses super fast with multiple bids, and we aren't even getting a showing. You know what I said to myself or to my husband? I said, I don't think you took the 20 minutes to set the proper expectations. Because what he should have shown them is what average days on market would be, how many showings they should expect, what those showings would look like. But he didn't. And so now he has to deal with the drama, right? So set those expectations. Be sure to commit to a communication plan. I think we all got a little bit rusty on this because they were selling so insanely fast, right? So you put on the market, you'd have offers, and then it'd be gone. And you didn't really need to have reports going to the seller and calling them. I used to call all my sellers every Tuesday from 1:30 to 3:30, and we didn't really have to do that for a minute. But it's good to get back to it because here's what I've noticed. Where things go badly when it comes to price reductions, it starts at the table. Because when they say to you, well, what do you think of this price we chose? And you go, well, yeah, and maybe you do in the moment think it's pretty good. Well, yeah, I think it's good. I think we're fine. And then it's not fine. Then they're going to say, but you told me. So I always like to say, I feel we're making a mindful choice. However, the real estate market is like the stock market. It's unpredictable. So I can't promise you that we will achieve this price. What I can promise you is I'm going to work overtime because the more you earn, the more you like me, the more you use me again, the more you refer me, and the more I earn. So I am fully incentivized to fight for you. And I respect you enough if the market is not responding to tell you the truth. Now, my communication plan typically is I would reach out to you every Tuesday between 1:30 to 3:30. That will give us time to see what happened over the weekend, do our follow-ups on Monday so I can give you a clear report. Will Tuesday be okay for you? And then I'm going to tell them what other reports I might be going to send because you all have different things in your system. But I'm going to ask at the end of that, will that communication plan be satisfactory? Because if they feel neglected and ignored, they assume you're just not working, right? Or they get so mad at you that anytime you suggest an adjustment or there's an offer negotiation, they do the worst thing almost just to spite you because they're mad at you because you didn't communicate. And I was thinking about this. We were talking about rapport earlier. Most of you do such a good job winning them, and you're charming, and you build that rapport, and you take that listing, and they feel like you care about them, and they're feeling good, and then they don't hear from you. It's like ice water, right? And they're driving up in their driveway every day. They see that sign in the yard. It feels like an enormous rejection. So the more you communicate, the better off you will be. And that's where you may want to ask them even, this is what I typically do. And Tasha, you may want to say to them, can you share your ideal scenario? Do you prefer I call you, email, or text you? Is once a week enough? So I want to give them what they need. And I want to have all my steps in my system in place to provide those updates. I do need to call them every week. Now, there may be a rare situation. It's vacant land. It's some, $22 million property that they already know is not going to sell quickly. But then you would modify that communication plan to whatever made sense. Now, when you're at the property, if possible, because you feel you've done that retail pricing and they are acknowledging that we're pressing the ceiling, then preset that first price reduction if you can, what that would look like and by when. And sometimes that works. Now, obviously, you're still going to have to call back and confirm it before releasing it, but it's at least worth a try. They may say no, they may not agree, but if you can preset, that's awesome. And I get it, you may have to be very involved in preparing the home for sale. And, I had somebody say to me the other day, they said, I helped get this home ready for sale. And then I couldn't figure out why is people looking at it and they're not making offers. And they said, I went over to the house in the middle of the week. Now, working couple with a few kids and a couple of pets, and they went over to the house during the week and they saw how messy the house was. And dishes in the sink and beds unmade and underwear on the floor. And they said it was so messy. There was even dog doo-doo in the corner of the kitchen. So they had to get pretty involved, right? They had to say, hey, we need to get a housekeeper in here if you have to limit the days that the property's shown. But we got to take charge of making sure that that home looks its best. And I think part of that is having also a great group of quality vendors you can recommend. Here's the thing, though. Don't let them use you for your great vendors and then not list with you. You keep those close to the vest, because we've all had that happen, right? We've all made that mistake where we give up these great vendors and we tell them all the important things they need to do to get the highest price possible. And then they go use your vendors and they list with someone else. So here's my script for that. Let's say that Michelle said to me, so Debbie, well, I need to wait a couple weeks to list it. And I want to do some of these things. And so maybe you could give me some of your vendors. I'll reach out to them. Gosh, Michelle, I'm so excited that, we're going to work together and that you're going to do these things to the home. I'd absolutely be happy to provide my concierge service of arranging these vendors for you and helping you work with them. You see, the thing about my vendors is they know that real estate transactions can be very messy. So on a real estate transaction, they do not prefer to work consumer direct. So they only work through me when I have the property listed, and I can help be that middle person to get the deal done, to get everything handled. See, I'm not going to give up those vendors, guys, right? Because that is magic when you've got a great group helping you. So what if you know the price is high? You don't want to waste days on market yet. And you say, well, let's do this. What if I bring in a group of the top agents I trust to critique the property before it hits the market? When we sold our house a few years back in Huntington Beach, I did exactly this. There were a group of about 6 agents that were right there in the Huntington Beach market. Some of you know some of them, Sean Stanfield, Jody Clegg, some great agents that do lots and lots of production. And I said, before I bring in stagers, before I go to the open market, here's the price I'm thinking. Would you guys come in and look? And in exchange, if you have a buyer, I'd be happy to allow you to show the buyer before I go to the open market, like a return favor, right? So I had them all come through, confirmed a price, got their opinions, which I very much valued. And every single one of them showed the house in the next week. And Jody actually, brought in a fabulous full price offer and left a $50,000 deposit check on the counter. And that was easy done, right? But I've just seen so much value in that, especially in a home that's kind of custom and unique and not cookie cutter. So it's a little bit hard even for you to figure that exact price. Bring in some friends, let them take a look at it. Always reminding our sellers, though, too, if they're not going to allow the property to be shown pretty frequently and easily, it's going to hinder the sale. So access is important. Condition is important. Them being out of the home is important. Dealing with their pet situation is important. So we want to remove all the roadblocks. And pre-schedule the price reduction conversations so all parties are included. And let me share with you what I mean. So I'll use my husband's as an example. So it is a probate, and there are like 5 heirs involved. And I said to him last night when he was speaking to the one person, I said, you know what? You're going to need to be careful. You know from experience that if you don't get all 5 into the conversation, somebody's going to be the roadblock at the end. So whether it's their partner, their spouse, or a group of family members, if you're always just speaking to one person, you could be doing an amazing job. All the facts, all the figures, all the right information. And you know what? Then that person hangs up the phone and says, Tasha said we should reduce the price. And Michelle says, no, I'm not reducing the price. And then that's the end of it, right? Because Michelle didn't get to hear the dialogue, the information, the data. So not necessarily every week on every check-in call do you need all parties, but when it's time to have those price reduction conversations, I would encourage that. And then here's a big one. Don't accept small reductions. They don't work. They don't work. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, okay? Totally. You can tell me, nope, Debbie, you're totally not thinking clearly. But here's what I've discovered. Most sellers will have 1, 2, maybe 3 reductions before they'll lose their mind and fire you. And I find typically it's 2 that hit the ceiling. They're like, you're just, Tracy, you've seen it, right? They're like, you're not doing your job. I'm done. So when you know how they say rip off the Band-Aid? When you're picking at these little reductions, each reduction gives them a little bit of hope. And then that hope is smashed when it makes no difference. And then who do they blame? So don't accept small reductions. Now, you're not going to find this report because this is going back like literally probably 30 years. There was a NAR report years ago that grabbed my attention because it said if a property is receiving some activity and no offers yet, it's statistically at least 5% too high. But if it's dead in the water, nobody is even coming to look, statistically, it's probably 10% at least too high. And that was helpful because now some of us have areas where they are very cookie cutter subdivisions, makes it a bit easier, model match and that type of thing. But in many areas, it's not so easy. And if you don't have an exact data to show that seller, it's difficult. What do I say to them? How far do we need to adjust it? So I would say, Penny, we're at a point right now where we've had 2,200, and I love to use this line. Tell them how many online views they've had. And I like to call them online previews. We've had 2,200 online previews. I've called every agent with my reverse prospecting that have matches for the property. We've done everything we said we would do in the marketing. And you know what? We're just really kind of dead in the water. when it comes to activity. And there was a National Association of Realtor report that said if we have no activity, no offers, statistically, we're at least 10% too high. So, what I would recommend today is I would recommend that we do an adjustment of 10% so that I can remarket the property and we can get some excitement going and hopefully get your property sold. Now, what do we know is probably going to happen? They're going to cut us back. So, Breck, to your point, if you're in that situation where there's some activity and offers and you're recommending a 5% adjustment, don't accept less than 3. Okay, because we know they're going to cut you back. If they won't give you 5, don't accept less than 3. If you're asking for a 10% adjustment and they won't do that, don't accept less than 7. Okay, so what do you do then? What if they say, no, I'll only give you a 1%? Well, Breck, I very much appreciate that you're willing to consider it, to cooperate with that. I'm going to need to say, though, no, that's probably not the right thing to do. We shouldn't do it. Because you see, a reduction that small, if we were that close, we'd already have offers. So the only thing a reduction that small is going to do is cause us to have to do another and another, which might make you look desperate, and it's going to frustrate you. So why don't we do this, Breck? You have all the data, all the info. Why don't you take a couple of days? Think about it. And I'll give you a call on Saturday, and I'll ask you to reconsider at least a 3% adjustment. So Saturday morning at 9, I'll give you a call then. See, I know the first thing is going to be pushback. That's natural, right, guys? And if we can't get them to do it in that moment, you might need to give them a day or two, let them grieve a little bit about the fact that their home isn't worth what they thought. Some of us we've sold homes, we know the feeling, right? And then circle back and ask them to do the right thing. And if you have a seller that's especially tough, as there are some of them out there, it might be better to meet them in person. It's easier to be more aggressive on the phone or passive aggressive via email. But if they're really tough, you may want to meet them in person. And guess what, guys? There is a true, real thing called home court advantage. So if you can get them to come to your office, let's say they live nearby, and sit with them in your office, maybe even show them on the TV the most, the properties most like theirs that people are viewing, and do the virtual tour with them. I found my husband and I, we were selling our house in Huntington. That was really confrontational to us. You think your house is great, right? And you sit on the couch and you do the virtual tour of the few that you're competing with. You're like, oh my gosh, their kitchen is so much nicer. And oh, wow, look at their pool. It's amazing. Kind of brings you into reality. So might be good to bring them to the office and take them on a virtual walkthrough of 3 to 5 of the toughest competitors. So much of your success with this, though, it's your energy. It's your command. It's your authority, your confidence. It's how clear and strong you are. And when I say strong, I don't mean harsh. I just mean direct and confident. Think about it this way. You're the doctor. They're the patient. If we went to the doctor today and the doctor discovered something wrong with us, and the doctor said, this is what's wrong with you, and this is what you need to do if you're going to survive. Now, we could say, I don't want to have that wrong with me. I don't want to do those things. I don't want to listen. And the doctor would say, I understand. And yet, if you don't take these actions, you will not survive. So maybe we leave and we come back in a month and we see the doctor again. And the doctor says, if you don't take these actions, you will not survive. Guess what, though? Even in life or death situations, sometimes the patient doesn't listen, and sometimes the patient dies. So, as strong and clear, as fabulous as you do and work with them and for them, how do I want to say it? You want to be relentless in doing your best for them, but also a little bit unattached to the ultimate outcome. Because guess what? You can't want it more than they do. The market is not your fault. The fact that they bought a house backing to the airport, not your fault. The fact that they're messy and painted every room a different color, not your fault. The fact that they need more money than the home is worth, not your fault. So don't apologize. Don't weaken. Don't sound tentative, nervous, or scared when you speak to them. And be ready for their objections, because they're going to have some. Don't, though, let them put you on the defensive, because it's not your fault. So do your best. You just can't be overly attached to the outcome. But here's my rule. If they will not reduce it, I'm going to ask them for an extension. And then I'm still going to ask them again in the future to reduce it. And I always am looking at the market to find a legitimate way to spark a sense of urgency. Why is this the right time? If we adjust now, we can get the home sold, under contract, and potentially even closed before the spring inventory hits. Like, I'm always looking to create that legitimate sense of urgency. Now, once in a while, they're going to want to take it off the market. And if they do, and they have time left on that listing, now I'm not giving you guys legal advice right here. I'm just throwing out a suggestion that may or may not be binding. You may want to ask for some kind of written commitment from them that will give you that remainder of time in the future. So if I said, Doug, I appreciate that you're frustrated, you want to take it off the market, and we have a 6-month agreement, we've only used 2 of those months. Now, I can charge a cancellation fee, which my broker would probably prefer. Or what I can do is, if you'll sign a letter of commitment with me that you agree that you owe me those additional 4 months if and when you ever list the property again, then I'm going to waive the cancellation fee, right? So whatever, all I'm saying, and I don't want to get deep in the weeds of that, go talk to your broker, think about it. They might put something in writing and still not list with you, and you're not going to take them to court. But I'm just looking, if even nothing more, then look them in the eye and ask for a verbal commitment. Now, once you get offers, because some of them may be so great and way over asking that you can do them on the phone. But if that's not the case, and there's going to have to be some more negotiation, then I would say consider presenting those offers in person at your office, or if possible, because remember, home court advantage, or if you have to, go to their home, go to their office, and it just makes it easy. You can go through everything and get it signed. Still kind of old school. In some cases, work better, right? So I'm going to go to the questions in the chat in just a second. But if you have some great takeaways so far, type those in the chat box now. And then I'm going to go back to your questions. But let's just see, what were your takeaways? If you can just give me one thing that you think you can take from this Zoom and go put into action immediately. So type that in there. Then we'll do a little bit of stump the coach. So no more than 2 price drops. Doug says, I wish we could copy the chat box. Jessica, maybe you can type in there. When they get the recording, will they be able to still see the chat? Because that would be cool. Michael said he's new. Michael, I was new and in a market where fixed rates were 18%. So I had no choice. I had to learn to do this immediately. Some of you maybe got into the business like 3, 4, 5 years ago, and this is now kind of happening, right? And this is tough for you. So Jess says, no, you can't see the chat, but you know what? We're going to go back to some of those questions in a minute. So hopefully that will help you. So questions, yes, it's going to be time for Stump the Coach. But before we do that, I'm going to take just 2 seconds here. I just want to congratulate you guys for even being here today. I have confidence that the fact that you showed up, engaging in the chat box, I have every confidence that you can take what we covered today and implement this on your own. But it's not an easy topic. So what if there's a better way to master it? So with your permission, and if you're okay with it, I'm just going to take a quick 1 minute and tell you about a new training I put together for you guys on this topic, because I feel it's going to be very timely. So I have a brand new price reductions course, and then we're going to go over the chat and answer all those questions. So bear with me for a second here. $397 one-time fee if you join today. And I have spent, I don't even know how many hours. I drove my staff crazy redoing the content to get the best of the best 7 weeks of on-demand price reduction training. Now, because you guys are busy, in the 7 weeks, I realized you might need a little bit of extra time. So we have a nice portal, a great learning management system where you can go in, you can watch your sessions, you can grab my scripts, you can email me direct. I will always answer you in the business day. Any questions you have, so you have complete access to me. And then you'll have 45 days after the course to continue to access those recordings. And of course, the scripts and the downloads, those will all be yours forever, right? And when you think about, even in parts of the country where the price point is not as high as it is here in Orange County, I wanted to make this piece so affordable that if you just got one price adjustment, it paid for itself 10, 20, 30, 40 times over. But it is the gift that keeps on giving, because once you master this skill, guys, you got it. So if you want to join, you just scan that QR code. And I know I make Jess kind of crazy when I do these things at the last minute, because she runs my world here. But Jess, anyone who joins us today, what I also want to give them, I just want to also give them access to our negotiations course. And Jess, you can type in there. I don't even remember how much we sell that course for and how many modules, but I will just include that for free, no additional charge, if you do the price reductions course, because I feel like the two go a little bit hand in hand, because you need to master some of the skill of dealing with tough people and negotiating. So if you join the price reduction course, I'm going to also include and give you automatic access to the negotiations course, which includes very, very high level communication skills. So Jess, can you type in, if you can hear me, I think you're there, type in how many modules, how many weeks the negotiations course is, and what that normal pricing is, just so they know. There we go. Yeah, normally it's a 12-week course for $997. So guys, you do price reduction at $397. I'm going to give you that one also, okay? Because this is just such a critical time of year. And remember, you're going to have access for 7 weeks, or access for both of these, sorry, confusing myself, for the length of the course, but then an additional 45 days. And we'll do that for you guys for both of them, okay? But you got to sign up today. You sign up later, you can have the price reductions, but I feel like the universe rewards people who take action. So we're going to reward you today. Okay, and by the way, if you're a forward client or Brivity client, just type in the chat box and Jessica is going to stay on here and she's going to send you a link while I answer some of your questions. Okay, so if you're Brivity, forward, place, if you're part of our world already, type that in the chat box and Jess will be standing by to help you. Okay, so let's grab a couple of these questions. Let's go to Joy, and I'm going to go fast here, guys, because we have limited time. Sellers who put so much into their homes that they'll never get what they put into it out of it. You know, there is one thing I used to say, Joy, when a seller would say to me, well, I spent $100,000 on my kitchen. And you're telling me that's only going to get me 20,000 more on the price? And I would say, you know, Joy, I understand that's disappointing. And yet, remember, you did your remodel 3 years ago. And at the time you did it, you actually weren't thinking of selling. You did it for yourself and your family to enjoy. And you have enjoyed it for 3 years. Unfortunately, improvements in a home, kind of like a car, they depreciate, right? So while we can't get the 100,000, I'm confident we can get you the highest realistic price possible, right? So, and that might be somebody who has to do the retail pricing, and we agree to build in those incremental price adjustments. So Lester says, what's a good response for a seller that says, well, can't they just make me an offer instead of dropping the price? You know, Lester, that is such a good question. I'm so glad you asked, because I agree with you. It kind of just makes sense, right? Why wouldn't they just make me an offer? But you see, they might feel that you wouldn't be receptive. An agent working with them might recommend they go view something that's more in line with their price point because they don't want their buyer to be disappointed. And if we want to open your property up to people who are in the right price range to actually make offers, that's why we need to do what I recommended a week ago and adjusted the 5%. So Lester, it is time to make that adjustment. Will you allow me to do that for you today? See, I'm going to tell him, and then I'm going to ask him, are you going to allow me to do that today? Let me just scan through here, see if we've got another one. I should have, but I took an overpriced listing that didn't sell and I couldn't get the reduction. So Matthew, if you're taking one and you're like, I just don't know that this is going to be a good financial thing for me to do, then we really have to be careful to make sure that we make that decision while we're there at the table, before we're going in. I've had moments where I said, I just closed my book and I said, gee, you know, Matthew, I appreciate the opportunity. Unfortunately, your expectations are so unrealistic that I know I cannot achieve them for you. So I do not want to be the agent that disappoints you. I respect you enough to tell you absolutely the truth. And I know you can find an agent who will do what you want them to do. All I ask is if you list with them at this price and they promise you they can achieve it, don't give them a reduction. Make them earn it. Make them do what they said they're going to do. And if that doesn't work, I hope you'll remember the door is always open. I'd be happy to work with you when you're ready to price it in a realistic fashion. And you might even want to go a short listing with them, because then you can test. And if it's not working, you can call me. And remember, I was the one that respected you enough to tell you the truth, right? Um, we can always go down, but we can't go up. That's true. And yet, that's one of the reasons the less is more philosophy is so exciting, because it creates that sense of scarcity and urgency. And we all know what happens when buyers start to bid against each other. But if we have only one buyer and there's no bidding more, well, then that's not going to happen, right? Let's see, I'm scanning through really quickly. I think, I don't know, I only have a minute, guys, so I'm trying to find one that really would help you all. Sellers are getting offers under list and won't counter anything less than list. You know what, Michelle? You take everything we said and you do it. You show them the other properties. You show them the data. You are firm and clear with them. And then you know what? You may just have to keep at it until they see for themselves. Sometimes I've noticed they have to lose 2 or 3 when they're that hard-headed before they're willing to listen. Okay. Let's see. I like to show them homes. All right, guys. I want to incorporate a cancellation fee. Yeah, Michelle, talk to your broker, look at the forms, think about it. Could you do that? Because it's something you could also always get rid of if you chose to, right? If you didn't want to charge that fee or use it as a point of negotiation. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to have to run to my next Zoom, but I super appreciate all of you being here today. Hope you had some great takeaways. And Jess says, if she missed you, she will email you the special discount link if you're a forward client, Brivity or Place, because she caught you in the chat. Remember what I promised you. If you join today, $397, we're going to also give you that negotiations course, normally $997, and an additional 12 weeks. Because you know what, guys? I am confident that if you would hustle up and go through both of those courses, you would be so skilled up and ready for the year. So I hope you join us. All right, guys, have a great day. This was lots of fun. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.